When we solve multi-step equations, it's very similar to us solving easy one-step equations. In fact, if you look at the steps I have down here, they're going to look really similar to what you've seen before. Normally I say, what are we solving for? What do we have to get rid of? How do we get rid of it? And if you look here though, it says, what are we solving for first? What do you have to get rid of first? And how do you get rid of it? Now that stays the same. But notice this first here. It's because it's a multi-step equation. We're going to have more than one step. So, when it says what are we solving for first, normally we'd say we're solving for the variable. But now we're going to solve for the variable term. Well, if we're solving for the variable term, what do you have to get rid of first? Well, normally we'd say the number on the same side of the equal sign as the variable. Okay, I'm going to change it a little bit and say the number being added or subtracted. And the reason it's a number being added or subtracted is because when we solve equations, guys, we're trying to figure out the unknown. So we're actually working backwards. So we're actually going to do order of operations backwards. Well, the last thing we always do is add or subtract. So that's the first thing we're going to do to get rid of something. Okay? And then how do we get rid of it? This isn't any different. We're going to use inverse operations. Inverse operations, remember, adding and subtracting are inverse operations, multiplying and dividing are inverse operations. They undo each other. And then we have number 4. Once we hit number 4, we've gone through these 3 steps, we go back and do them again. Now we're back to our original questions of what are you solving for? What do you have to get rid of? How do you get rid of it? So let's look at an example. Let's look at this first equation here. We have 1/2 times x minus 5 equals 10. So our first question is, what are we solving for? What are we solving for first? And it's a variable term. We want to solve for x, but since we have 2 things going on here, 1/2 times x, and then we minus 5, it's a multi-step equation. So let's solve for a variable term. Let's solve for the 1/2 x. So if we're solving for 1/2 x, what do we have to get rid of? Well, we get rid of the number being added or subtracted. 5 is being subtracted, so let's get rid of it. If we're subtracting 5, we're going to add 5. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't like to think of this as a minus 5 but a negative 5, that's fine. Positive 5. Okay? Whatever we do to one side of the equal sign, we do to the other. Okay? So now our 1/2 x comes straight down. We double check to make sure these are opposites and they cancel. We bring down our equal sign, and 10 plus 5 is 15. Remember, once we do our 3 steps, we go back and repeat. So now we say, well, what are we solving for now? Well, we're solving for the x. So what do you have to get rid of? Well, you have to get rid of the 1/2. Well, it's times 1/2, so how do we get rid of it? Well, we divide by half. But remember, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So if we just multiply each side by 2, this cancels out to give us a bunch of 1s over here. So we have 1x equals 15 times 2, which is 30. As always, go ahead and plug it in. What is 1/2 of 30 minus 5? 1/2 of 30 is 15, and 15 minus 5 equals 10. So we know we did it right. If you look at the second example here, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a hint. Okay? Simplify first. I know this is kind of outside our steps for solving, but it makes the problem easier if we simplify. Here's what I mean. Let's rewrite this. Instead of subtraction, let's go keep, change, change. And that becomes a negative 9x plus 17 equal to negative 4. Okay? If we just were given this, and I said, okay, simplify this expression, you would say, oh, look it, we have like terms. We have 2x's and a negative 9x's. That would combine to give us a negative 7x's plus our 17. Well, let's do that, except don't forget, we set it equal to negative 4. That's what I mean by simplifying first. We combined our like terms, and once we do that, we have a simple 2-step equation to solve. What are we solving for? Well, we're solving for our x. So now let's solve for our negative 7x. Well, if I'm solving for that, what do I have to get rid of? I have to get rid of the 17. It's plus 17, so I'm going to subtract 17. Whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other. we bring down our negative 7x, we double check to make sure these are opposites of each other, we bring down our equal sign, and then we combine these two terms here. Again, be careful with negatives. You can think of this in a couple ways. You can think of this as negative 4 minus 17 or negative 4 plus a negative 17. Either way, that will combine to give us a negative 21. Go through our steps again. Now what are you solving for? X. So what do we have to get rid of? The negative 7. It's negative 7 times x, so we're going to do the inverse. We're going to divide by a negative 7. Again, we want to make sure if this is negative, we divide by a negative. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 is 1x. Negative 21 divided by a negative 7, since there's two negative signs here, our answer is going to be a positive 3. We want to see if we're right. We go 2 times 3 minus 9 times 3 plus 17. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, minus 9 times 3, which is 27, plus 17. That would be a negative 21 plus 17 still equals a negative 4. And again, you guys, you could just type that into your calculator and see that we get the correct answer. Okay? So when we solve two-step equations, you're just going to go through our steps twice. And if you have like terms, combine them first by simplifying.